In your experience, what's been like one of the top mistakes people make when trying to sell?
Oh, wow. One of the top mistakes. There are so many. One of the things we train on is the 30-second commercial. And if you think about it, like a networking event, you go out and you meet people. The traditional way a lot of people approach that is they immediately go into, oh, we're this and we're an award-winning that and we do this and we can help you out and all that. And it's like, without even knowing if this person is potentially even a viable prospect for them. We talk about, you don't do that. You want to ask and find out if there are pains that you can solve. And part of that means you need to identify your ideal customer. What characteristics do they have? What pains do they have? And then figure out a way to hit bullet points. We help businesses that are worried about X. And you know that these are issues your ideal customer has. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're talking to somebody that has those, they're going to start paying attention quick. If they say, yeah, you're describing my business, the tendency for a lot of salespeople to say, oh, we can help you with this. And it's like right away you're into sales mode. No. No.
It slices, it dices.
Exactly.
Chops.
No. That is the worst thing to do in that moment. Then you say, wow, really? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Exactly.
Draw them out. Find out what the pain is, and then really start getting into it. Turn the knife, as we like to say.
Welcome to Mission Control. At Peralta Design, we launch brands. But for now, let's launch right into this episode.
3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff.
Everybody, welcome to this episode of Mission Control. This is your host, Ramon Peralta with Peralta Design, and we launch brands. And we've got a really great, exciting episode for you today. We have the one and only Doug Rawady of Sandler Training with us.
Yes, the one and only.
The fans are going crazy.
Standing ovation.
You bring the crowd.
Of course I do.
You know,
everywhere I go, it's in my pocket.
Exactly. It's a little tape recorder actually with a
Here
sound
they
effect. So, speaking of crowds, today is just like a marathon day for me because I shot up to Hartford this morning. Shout out to Jennifer and MCC, Minority Construction Council. She always brings me in, and I love speaking to these folks because they're like early stage small businesses. They're carpenters, they're truckers, they're welders, they're commercial cleaners, and they're just there like it's just like the deer in the headlights, because they're just there. Some of them have websites, some of them don't. They're just really learning the early stages of launching, and I get to teach them about branding and marketing, and it's just exciting, and they buy a few books, sign them, and it's just a fun morning. And shout out to that program. It's called the MCC Boot Camp. So she brings in different speakers.
Jennifer?
Jennifer, yeah, and she had Dr. Fred came on after me to talk about relationship building, and it's such a big part. I mean, there's so many facets to entrepreneurship.
Oh, yeah. It's an amazing thing, and I don't know how you teach it in a way. In that, I was talking to Zoe about this. In that. The most valuable thing that you can come out of college with is connections.
Yeah.
And building your network
yes.
is going to be the most impactful thing in your life. It's who you know.
Hands down. And, your network is your net worth.
True story.
Thank you.
And
absolutely.
The tough part for me is how do I tell Gen Z, how do I do this when it's
You mean the ones that don't like talking to people?
Right, exactly. They're the most interconnected generation, but the actual talking and connecting to people is a whole different level.
That's the irony. They're the most connected digitally,
but they're the most disconnected when it comes to like
analog,
exactly.
like human to human.
Yeah.
But I think that they're gonna have to take up the mantle at some point and interact, and I think they do well on phones, on Zooms. They're as they grow older, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to talk to people.
Well, the scary thought, God forbid this would ever happen, but if technology fails us across the board and we actually have to go back to talking to people face to face, wow, you're gonna have a lot of people who don't know what to do.
No,
I'm glad that her like summer job is she's a server, so at least she's getting the like, okay, how do you schmooze a little bit? How do you warm up to people?
It's like, during the pandemic when kids started doing the e-learning, like that next year, they call it like the lost year or two. But when they came back to school, some of these kids just didn't even know how to behave in class. Like in just that short of a time period of not interacting with each other, they just didn't know that if somebody's talking, you look, you look at, because when they're on Zoom, they could look around,
Sure.
put a photo up, do all. They came up with all kind of ways to like be present but not be present.
Yeah,
But now
exactly.
you're in class, and so the teacher's looking, and so like they had to go through this training, and that was just 1 year of us not being social, being in a social environment.
Yeah.
I've also heard that there's already like a nostalgia for it, which blew my mind.
Yeah.
That there is a whole wave of nostalgia. Like, man, do you guys remember when we could just get on with, you know what I mean? And it's crazy that you could
I think for the older kids, they were fine, but the
Right.
little guys on a Zoom, like 5-year-olds on a Zoom,
right.
you got like 15 of them on a Zoom. I mean, it's like the Muppets.
Well, I got to tell you, I've been on Zoom sessions where the adults are like 5-year-olds on Zoom, so it's really like, okay, come on.
I definitely have nostalgia from the traffic. I still daydream about that.
Yeah,
Jumping on and there's just literally no one there.
You thought you were like I Am Legend.
That was the best.
Driving down.
Great reference. Yeah.
There was nowhere to go, but it was just a good feeling. Like,
Yeah.
I really wish I took advantage of it more.
Yeah.
Go more places without any traffic.
Yeah.
It's the best.
Somebody
Jumping on Route
set the
8.
record for the Cannonball Run, which will probably never, which is the race
Yeah.
from New York to LA. And I don't think that record will ever be broken because when will you ever have the roads that wide
They
open?
should do a new one though, because then you can have some EVs in there, and then they're trying to find a charging station. it'll just add like a whole nother level.
If they get that solar car that's an EV, I mean that thing just keeps going so
Yeah.
long as you've got
True.
As long as the sun is shining, right?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Exactly. Like you
Yeah.
have a roof. Like why isn't that a solar panel? Right. Crazy. But speaking of I Am Legend in movies, I did happen to catch Dune.
Okay. Dune 2.
Dune 2.
I'm envious.
I was out in San Diego and caught that, and went out there. I was out visiting RJ, and we caught it. And I think if I had to, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to give it like a 6.5.
Okay.
I know people felt like it was. I think the cinematography was epic, but it definitely felt like a middle story. Like it's the first one was like teeing up the story, and then this is like the middle, and now we're, I don't want to. Kev knows that if I keep talking, I'm going to reveal some stuff.
Spoilers everywhere.
Well, for what it's worth, when all the cast and everybody was doing the interview circuit,
Yeah.
Denis Villeneuve, I think I'm pronouncing it right, was on Colbert, and that was the question was asked, and he as
Yeah.
much as said, yeah, there's Dune Messiah, which would be the third
Right.
in the
It's
saga,
happening.
is going to happen. No date yet, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's already eclipsed 500 million
Yeah, that's-
globally, which is
Yeah.
That's
wild.
a chunk of money. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gorgeously shot. It's amazing. And,
I mean-
and they're riding the worms in it. I mean, that's not a spoiler, but the way they simulated that.
There's some action.
pretty
so
wild.
here, I mean, for me, I kind of get what you're saying in that there's these high action moments that
Yeah.
are amazing, and then there's kind of these parts in the middle
Yeah,
that there's a lot of and the runtime's on the longer side too.
yeah,
So there's a lot of, if you're not already sold on this universe, it's tough. The second one doesn't do anything to really sell you anymore.
mm-hmm.
I think as a fan,
Javier Bardem was great. I mean,
Oh, amazing.
He's just a brilliant.
I think it was really
Dude.
well cast actually.
Yeah, it was.
Austin Butler, who played,
I did not realize that was
Fade.
Elvis,
yeah,
the bad guy.
yeah, crazy,
Well,
right?
The lack of
makeup-
hair,
Exactly.
and,
Yeah,
and not
and
talking like
eyebrows.
this,
the way they filmed it with like the IR cameras,
Yes.
like that was so well done to me. It was
Yes.
so starkly,
Yeah.
alien, and it
Right.
felt so
Well, that's
otherworldly.
like, that's like when you adjust the levels in Photoshop and you just kind of wipe out any
Right,
contrast.
Exactly. Yeah.
It had that vibe. I mean, it was definitely entertaining, but once we all see it, and Kev can give the permission, we'll go a little bit deeper into it. But Bond now you're talking about might be cast.
Oh
by
yeah.
a
So
certain
talking
someone?
about movies, we apparently Aaron Taylor Johnson has been offered the role of Bond
Mhm.
to pick up the mantle post Daniel Craig, and I just don't have my doubts. Now, granted, I've been wrong before, right? Like nobody, especially when you look at a role like the Joker, it's a tough role to nail, and I don't think anybody thought Heath Ledger was gonna become this
Oh, he killed it, though.
incredible
He
Joker.
changed
He
it.
was, yeah.
Right,
He
exactly.
owned it.
Yep.
Changed
Owned
it.
it, changed it, made it. It's already an iconic role, like Jack Nicholson, and like role already iconic, but he knocked it out of the park. So I could be totally wrong. Maybe Aaron Taylor Johnson does the same thing. I'll pass judgment when it comes out.
And here's the thing. I mean, and I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt too. But when Daniel Craig assumed the role like eons ago,
he was weird for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was kind of like blonde-haired guy.
Yeah.
It's like
not the most handsome guy.
No, but he
chiseled, but not you know.
Yeah.
I mean,
I would say
more
that
of a face for
Pierce
radio.
Brosnan at his prime was probably more of the suave.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
He fit the stereotype. But then with this new young man, I think they may also be seeking to reinvent the character for a younger audience. Like we're thinking like, Roger Moore, Sean Connery.
Right.
Mish Moneypenny. You got to be that Mish Moneypenny. Don't be doing that,
You're the man now, dog.
That's right. Goldfinger. You want me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I want you to die.
Well, since we have our own James Bond in studio, we're going to cut and come back to the one and only Doug Rawady right after these words. This episode here is brought to you by the Connecticut Small Business Boost Fund. It gives small business owners access to flexible funding for capital expenditures and working capital and connects them with support services. Small businesses and nonprofits can borrow between $5,000 and $500,000 depending on eligibility and need. And you can spend how you spend the money. It could be equipment, payroll, utilities, supplies, marketing, advertising, all that good stuff. And they're very low interest over a 60 to 72 month term. You can get more information and you can apply at ctsmallbusinessboostfund.org. The Business Development Director and Certified Instructor with Sandler Training.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, audience. Always a pleasure.
Yes. So which voice are you going to use? You're like Pistachio Disguisey.
I could depending on what you want, I could really pull one out on the minutes notice, I could, if you'd like.
You make a great DM. Right?
Absolutely.
You're like the barkeep and then like
Dungeons and Dragons nerds here.
Yeah.
They want you to be the dungeon master. So side gig dungeon master.
There you go.
So
sign me up.
Yes. So Doug, tell us your story.
Okay. So as you referenced, in sales for pretty much my entire life, going back to the early years, I was born and raised in Western New York, up near Rochester, New York. And my parents owned I want to call it it was, if anybody used to watch Happy Days, Arnie's Place, it was kind of that concept. It was like a soda fountain sandwich shop catered to the kids after high school and also the local business people who would come in for breakfast and all that. So my older brother and I, when we were old enough to, basically work behind the counter, we worked in the family business. And so as a very, very young person, I got into the whole interacting with people, selling, all the rest of this stuff. And my father was a real personality. I mean, people loved him, and I probably inherited the goofiness from him. But I got led into the sales career at that age, and pretty much everything from then on that was work related had a sales component to it. And it wasn't until I got probably more into my 20s and such that I thought, yeah, this is what I do.
And how young were you? Were you behind a counter, serving up?
I was probably 7, 8 years old.
Child labor laws.
No. And the customers, not the high school, but they're like, oh, look at he's so cute back there. They're all telling my friend, and it's I'm thinking, okay, I'm
working stiff.
I'm adorable. Yeah. Little did I know, but yeah, I mean, I didn't care. It was the family business, and I used to. But it got awkward when you get to the point where you're old enough and you have to start throwing people out, like your high school peers. You have to say, hey, you're not cut off because we didn't serve liquor, but it's get out. And it's
way after their hot dog's done, they're just hanging out, loitering at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, something along those lines. I got to be in charge of stocking the jukebox and all that, so I was like the music, the DJ of the day as well too. I used to put the 45s in, and pick the music and all that. So yeah, it was a real adventure.
I can imagine that helped your sales career. Just interacting with so many different personality types.
It did. And I mean, somebody had mentioned earlier about the waiting, doing service, like waiting tables and such. And I did years of that as I got older. And I would advocate that for anybody who was considering going into sales, because that's selling. I mean, that is, you've got to deal directly with the public. It's customer service. It's sales, suggestive selling, upselling, cross-selling. I mean, that's, if you understand that your income is, I hate to say this to anybody who doesn't know, but your income, if it's tip driven, the bigger the check, typically the bigger the tip. So when somebody's ordering, you always suggest things to go with things. And when people order vodka and tonic, you say, would you like Stoli? Or, you always try to upsell to something that's going to make their experience better and also make the check larger.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. I agree, because we've all been to the restaurant and it's like the server could be having a terrible day, but a good server will come and make you have the best experience.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's the difference maker between what was an okay experience.
Yeah,
and
right.
what was I can't wait to come back here experience.
Well, and to be honest, I mean, that was, to me, there was an opportunity to be, I'm going to say entertainment, in the sense that you could, to your point, you could actually make the dining experience that much more enjoyable by interacting with people and maybe throwing a little bit of humor in here and there and all that, and just getting them to laugh and smile. And if the food was good, if it was god awful, then that was only compensating for it. But if it was good, that just made.
Why do I picture your dad like telling you, make them laugh?
No. Oh, he did
had
that.
The little crank. He had the little crank, and
the wind-up monkey.
The wind-up monkey. You have the little red vest on.
Yeah, he was good at that by himself. He didn't need me, but yeah. I think I saw the value of it watching him, though, so for sure.
But what an experience growing up in a family business.
Yeah.
And where were your parents from originally?
Well, on my father's side, I mean, for anybody who's trying to get their head around the name, my father's parents were Syrian and Lebanese. He was born in this country, but they came directly from the old country, and mom was a mixture of Irish and English. So the Rawady is an Arabic name. I have no idea if it stands for anything or means anything, but that's where it comes from.
And how much of that culture do you still kind of partake in? You like Middle Eastern food?
Oh,
do you cook?
Oh, please! I love any good. If somebody's got a line on good Arabic food or Middle Eastern food,
falafel,
let me know.
Shawarma.
Yeah. Shawarma. Bring me the shawarma, okay? Show me the shawarma. Absolutely.
Oh man. So you're working there now. Did your parents want you to like take over the business, or were they like, no, you're going to college?
No. Interesting question. I at a kind of an early age, I was singing in the band, the high school band, and I wanted to be the rock star. I mean, I was kind of had my sights set on being a musician. And of course, my parents, having more sanity than me, they were like, oh, you should do something else and fall back on this. But they weren't, to their credit, they weren't like laying down the hammer and saying you have to do this and all that. I didn't go to college. I didn't. I mean, it was in high school, and I saw friends who chose college because they had no idea what they wanted to do, and that seemed like something to do after. I was not a great student. I mean, it's like I was not into goofing off, but it's just like I didn't see myself doing 4 years of having to bury my nose in the books and all that. So I thought, no, I don't want to do that. And I didn't. I moved out to Denver not long after high school. I worked a few different gigs, and I just kind of.
Why Denver from New York?
Well, actually, I had friends out there.
You wanted something colder.
Yeah, exactly. I like the idea of Rocky Mountain High. It was like, oh boy, yeah, that's right. Let's do that. No,
John Denver was popular back then.
He was, yes, for sure. But that was my introduction into the rest of the country because I had friends out there that I could stay with and kind of get my.
So were you like a beatnik? You just grabbed your guitar and just hit the highway?
I did some version of that. Yes, I had a van. I had my guitar, my amp, and all that stuff, and off I went. Yeah.
A VW van?
No, it was a Chevy van, thankfully. No. But I did have a VW van in high school, though. So, yeah, I had that.
Oh, sure. Man, that's like the dream. If I could get one of those bad boys.
It's just so iconic.
Oh, no, that thing sucked. Trust me. No.
All right, you just totally reset the whole dream.
No. I'll give you this. It had the heat, and like in the winter, you had to go out and blow on the engine and heat it up so it would actually start up. It was not good. No.
Oh,
no.
Man. So now, when do you, first of all, you have a gift for music, apparently. Right?
I'd like to think so, yes. Yeah, a gift or a curse. It's a one or the other. Yeah.
And this charm, when did you discover you had a gift for sales or a gift for people?
I think on some level I knew I did, and I go back to my father, to his credit. He was a people person, and he was a cut up, and he had the accents and all that. No doubt I got some of that from him, but I could see that there was benefits to being a people person, and thankfully I wasn't introverted. I had to be restrained sometimes, so I knew that there was benefits, whether it was in professionally or personally or otherwise, to be out there, to be willing to engage and interact with people. And of course, when it became evident that was a component of sales, I thought, well, this is great. I mean, this is just another reason why this is a career path I should probably pursue. Yeah. So yeah, that was important.
And what happened once you got out to Denver?
I did there were a few different sales and non-sales things, but for a while I worked for a a door-to-door a company that was direct sales doing door-to-door business stuff, selling junk art into businesses. And I got a whole bunch of stories I can tell
that'll
you.
build your character.
Oh my
right
God!
there.
Let me tell you, I got thrown out of the AT&T corporate headquarters in downtown Denver many times. I discovered all kinds of ways to get into that building that were not through the front
So
door.
you learn persistence.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And you develop a thick skin when a security guard comes.
Rejection.
You gotta go.
Yeah. I mean, you got in sales. You got to get through the no.
Yeah, absolutely. But when you're schlepping a giant box full of junk oil paintings and you walk in the front door of the building and you go, "Hey, I was just next door with these and thought you might want some too," and they're looking at you like you got two heads. You're like, "What do you say now? What's your next thing?"
So are those real paintings, prints? What's the deal?
Oh, they were just whatever the mass production. They were metal etchings
Bob
from
Ross.
Asia. They were, oh my God, seriously, they were just musical boxes. I mean, honest to God, and the music boxes were a treat. They were these sort of like pseudo copper things that you'd go in, and when you get into a section of the building where there are people, you'd start yanking them out of the thing and turning them all on, and they're creating all this racket, and people are like, "What are these things?" Credit card here.
Yeah. Get them
until you get thrown out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was a treat. It was quite a proving ground. Yeah. Next step, corporate sales.
Right. No, but how do you progress? I mean, so you learn the art of the sale, the art of the deal, if you will.
Was that commission based, by the way?
It was, to a large degree. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, this is only incidental to the thing, but that organization was run by Scientologists. So do the math on that one. That was an interesting experience.
Did
they
you
had
felt you were getting sucked in?
No. It wasn't a recruiting thing for that, but they had offices in San Diego and Kansas City and Denver and a few other places. And there was, a little bit of that vibe to the whole thing. So that didn't last very long. But long enough to.
Who would you count among some of your mentors during this time for sales?
Maybe not so much sales, because part of the parallel path, Ramon, for me was I was really into personal development as well. I mean, sales was obviously a part of it, but personal and professional development, I always had this yen for like, well, what can I learn to make me a better person? I mean, professionally, sure, but so I was into Wayne Dyer. I did, those who are old enough to know what the S training was, I did the S training in Colorado, in Denver, which was a whole other experience. Then Wayne Dyer, and then Tony Robbins, and I did the whole gamut of those things to get better as a person. And then, of course, a lot of that transfers into sales.
Mindset training. Tell us a little bit about that S training.
That was short. I mean, the S was obviously is Latin for to be. That was the whole thing, but it was also an acronym for Erhard Seminars Training. Werner Erhard was the founder of EST, and he was sort of a cult figure back in the 60s, 70s, a guru, personal development guru. And EST was, I mean, there were parts of EST that were certainly very valid, that were life-changing if you embrace them, but that was also a program that was designed to upsell you into like never-ending education, and it was expensive stuff at the time. And anybody who ever did the S training, they always used to joke about, we called it the bathroom training. Because when you were in the seminar thing, they would not let you leave the room to use the bathroom, and you'd be in there for hours at a time. And I think there was some truth behind this, but it was always the argument was like, hey, what'll happen is when you're being confronted with stuff that is psychologically challenging and makes you uncomfortable, you'll come up with a reason to leave the room, which might be that I have to pee.
Right.
And they wouldn't let you do that. That you'd have to be there to be like, confronted with this stuff. So the bathroom training was kind of a funny, funny way to describe the S training.
A form of hazing.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So
bladder
like
control was a big part of it, let's say.
And did you do one of those weekends that Tony Robinson does? Where
I did virtually all of the big Robbins seminars. I did the Firewalk. I did all of the I did all of them pretty much. Yeah, they were life changing too. Yeah, they were.
And how much have you developed as a halo effect? Like how much of that now has become part of your mantra, your personal training?
Oh, it's very much a component of day to day, not just professionally but personally. I mean, I will say this. I mean, Tony, when I did my first Tony Robbins event, it was back in it was like 92, I think, thereabouts. He hadn't hit it like really, really big at that point. So it was the UPW, the Unleash the Power Within weekend, the Firewalk weekend. It was up in Worcester, Mass. And there were about, I don't know, 400 to 600 people in this auditorium up there. Now he does thousands of people in these huge arenas, and they're live streamed and all that. But this was a relatively small crowd, and I had heard about him. I think I read part of Personal Power, the first book, and all that. So I thought, check this out. And I went up there, and then the Firewalk is like the first night. And I have
You
to
do
tell
it?
you,
You did
I
it?
did, but I was having thoughts at the time
Did you
like,
burn your feet?
no, I did not. I did not. I mean, and I don't know that at least at that time anybody had suffered any serious burns or injuries as a result. But I had to sit around and really think about it when the time came. But I'm looking around and seeing all these people taking
So
their
it's pretty much like overcoming your fear
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
kind of pushing through the
Yeah.
discomfort.
Well, and the metaphor here is, think about it. It's like if you or when you do that, when you complete the firewalk, it's sort of like, wow, what else can I do? I mean, it's like there are no limits, no barriers, because you just walked across 25 feet of like 2,000
Hot
degree
coals.
coals. Yeah. Quit smoking, lose weight, approach a woman. I mean, hey, that's small stuff compared to that. So,
Oh
yeah.
God.
Yeah.
Out of perspective, do you think that, talking about Tony Robbins,
Yeah.
do you think that that's something that you're either born with or you're not, the ability to kind of command a room that way? Is charisma something, obviously it's something that you can, talking about personal development, professional development, it's a thing that you can work on and build, but to be at that level, right? To be able to command an arena of thousands with rapt attention, do you think that's something that's like a gift that you're given and some people have it or they don't? Or do you think anybody could get to that level?
Well, I think some people have it to that degree, but I think, I mean, if you're naturally introverted, it would be really tough to learn how to become that, to be able to get up in front of a room of people and just command that attention, because you'd probably be quaking the entire time. But going back to Tony for a second, he's physically imposing. The guy's
huge.
he's
Right.
a giant. Yeah. So when he's on the stage, you're like, wow.
Yeah.
And he's just like, the guy oozes energy. I mean, he's like another level for sure. But I don't know that that's teachable.
Right. That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's kind of like I could go out and play and shoot, jump shots, 3-pointers all day, but I will just never be Kobe Bryant. It just will never happen. I'll never be a LeBron James or Michael Jordan.
Sure.
And I think that there are some people, even in that regard, who I'll still beat Kev at basketball though. And if you guys want to come down and see it,
no.
we'll set
The gauntlet.
Ouch.
throwing that down.
Why do you want a lot of people?
I'm-
you want to put it on record. This is recorded.
That's exactly why. Just that way you get everyone can be accountable.
Sounds
but
like
anyway,
a good fundraiser.
He'll edit that out. Don't worry about it. You're off the hook.
but the point being that I think that there are people who kind of command that you just have this, I don't know what else to call it, but energy.
Yeah.
An aura.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
But let me give you the counterpoint to that, because when you're talking like motivation, for want of a better way to put it, that's one thing. But you also look at entertainers that are like comedians, for example, who could get up in front of a huge arena and they're not like this, but they've just got a way about them that draws people in, that gets people to go, they want, and they laugh and they want to hear the next words that come out.
Right.
That's a talent. There's no question. That's a talent. But it can be cultivated to a degree. Definitely can be.
Speaking of comedians, when you have people like, I don't know, like Jerry Seinfeld,
Yeah.
who command a whole stage, but then in his personal life, he's like, yeah, don't touch me, don't come up to me, like,
Yeah.
I don't want a bunch of people around me, like I'm good, But when he needs to go up there and perform, he can do that.
Well, it's like turning on a switch almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's the whole concept of being on, which I think is interesting.
Right.
And I think you feel it physically. That's why when you talk about that, there's something to it where it's draining. When you have to be on and you've been on for the last 14 hours, that physically demands more of you than just existing.
But I also think, in a place like that, I've experienced where I draw energy from the audience too. So if the audience is flat, no doubt, it is draining. But if the audience is engaged and and excited to see you,
I agree.
even if you've been speaking all day long, you draw from them. So it's just like reciprocal kind of experience that happens, that I see happen at those Tony Robbins events.
Oh, you're right.
I
Absolutely.
mean, the crowd has energy. There's people that are like, they have like almost, it's a kind of spiritual level. I think they have these spiritual awakenings. I did happen to see a couple documentaries of his. Now, you continued on this path of self-improvement, career-wise, because you've got 40 years plus of dealing with
Scary
businesses and teaching sales. But at what point did it shift where you felt like you had amassed enough experience that now you could help others?
Well, I'm gonna go back several years, like in a past life. Not that long ago, I was in the mortgage business for 18 years.
Okay.
I was a loan originator, and doing residential mortgage lending in and around Fairfield County, a bunch of different, and I worked and for some period of time, I worked at point of sale. I was in a real estate offices with realtors. And if for anybody who doesn't know that business or doesn't really think about it granularly, if that's a word, it is a commodity product. Loans are, it's very hard to say, well, my 30-year fixed rate is better than somebody else's, because basically unless your fees are lower, you're kind of selling the same product. So it's very hard to distinguish one loan from another, one vendor from another. And so the loyalty factor with realtors was a hard thing to get, because they were referral sources, realtors and attorneys and all the rest of that. But one thing that kind of set me apart from some of my peers was I knew how to coach them to be better salespeople. I knew how to sell. And so a lot of realtors back then, and I'm sure there are still some now, who got into real estate because, I love to look at houses and all that, but they weren't necessarily really savvy business people. So I had the ability to kind of help them get their heads around marketing and branding, some of the stuff you do, but also to become better at sales. And that was my value proposition as a loan officer. I'd say, look, you send me the referral and I will help you grow your business. And those that took me up on it became partners, literally partners, and would refer me all of their business. And I could close the loan. I mean, I knew how to do a mortgage, but that wasn't the real value. It was how I could help them with their business. And I did that I built a pretty substantial living as a loan officer doing that. And I realized that that's something that is transferable to other professions, is to be able to help people be better at what they do, whether it's, what you do, which I have tremendous respect for, or at least help them become better at sales. Because let's face it, marketing and sales are it. That's it. If you have great marketing and you can't sell, you can't close, your marketing's kind of useless.
Why am I thinking of Glenn Ross? All of a sudden, I feel like I'm talking to Ricky Roma.
Coffee for closers. Right. Let's have some coffee.
Cheers. Yeah. Absolutely. So you made it back to Connecticut. You went to New York, Denver, back to CT. Yeah. And did you have family here?
Well, yeah, and back to CT was like really coming to Connecticut for the first time, because I had not lived here before, but my mother and a good friend of hers were living here at the time. And when I was getting ready to leave Denver, it was like, all right, where am I going to go? And I still had illusions of being a musician. I wanted to do that. And it was like, well, do I go to California or do I come back east? And I didn't know anybody in California. I couldn't bunk with anybody. My mom said, come on back. She was like, come on back. So Connecticut, why not? And little did I know. Well, I mean, so not exactly the hotbed of Fairfield, Connecticut, the hotbed of artistic activity, but
you're not too far from New York City.
Yeah, that was my reasoning. It was. And I ended up there, and that was probably close to 40 years ago, 35, 40 years ago. Yeah. I've lived here longer than any other place in my life.
You're homegrown by now.
Yeah, exactly.
And when did you run into Sandler, or did they find you?
No, well, that was when looking for a new gig. Yeah. I had been, prior to getting on board with Sandler at the beginning of 2020, so it was 3 months before a pandemic, which is just, I would never advise anybody to make a major career change when that's going on. But I was looking for a new gig. I had been working previously for an association that catered to the trade show industry. I was the sales manager for this international trade association. And when that relationship wound down, I'm thinking, all right, now what? And I found the Sandler gig on Indeed, of all places. So I came up, I applied. Bob Carbonello, who's my boss, I met with him, and one of his...
Bob, who's darker than me, by the way.
Yes, he is.
I'm jealous of his tan, his perpetual tan.
He's got that look, for sure. But I met with them, and I was...
He's like those cashews we put in the air fryer? That's what Bob Carbonello looks like.
Oh, he's going to love this. He's going to love listening to this part.
Gotta make sure we tag him in this episode.
Oh yeah. Bob, by the way, you're mentioned in this podcast.
He's gonna think it's in a really good way too. No, we love him, and we've heard him. We've heard him give trainings at LeaderCast, and very knowledgeable. So we actually tried to get Bob, but we got you instead. So
I know you get sloppy seconds. Well, I tell you, he does not do the same kind of accents I do, so there you go.
Oh, God. All right, so you get the gig on Indeed. I mean, but you check all the boxes, because they're looking for people that are into sales and good at sales, because primarily the business model is training.
Yes. And it's, I mean, I sell the product and I facilitate the product. So
Mm-hmm.
I will be, I could be the person who would do the training, or I would be maybe just the person who sells it and one of the other trainers would conduct it. So
And you put out a ton of videos during the pandemic, I remember.
I did. Yeah. That was my thing. 60-second sales training. That was my intro. I did like once a week, every week for like over a year. 62 clips. That was a process. Let me tell you. If I had to do it again, I might rethink that. They're still out there, but boy, that was a lot of work.
We were both putting out video content during that time,
We were.
trying to help people because everybody was displaced during the headlights pandemic, and putting out content I think was a good strategy.
Yes.
So you and Bob work on Sandler together. Give us maybe some case studies, or help us understand like some before and afters, and the impact that you've made on some of these businesses.
So the thing, Ramon, the thing that's interesting about and Sandler started as primarily a sales training organization. And incidentally, for those that don't know, it is a franchise organization, probably 250 or 60 some odd franchises globally. It's around the world. And the one here in Connecticut that Bob is now president of has been here for about 16 years. So they've been around a long time.
Yeah.
They have a reputation. They're, highly regarded, which is good. But the offerings expanded into management and leadership and team development and all that probably 15, 20 or so years ago. And now it's a pretty comprehensive selection of training. A lot of companies need it, but they don't know they need it. They don't necessarily see training as a necessity, and I would argue that it isn't necessarily a necessity, but that there are certain organizations where there are deficiencies that could be corrected by training. So there's always the challenge of having the conversation, and a big part of what we train and teach is about uncovering pain, uncovering the problems that are like keeping them up at night or maybe just affecting the bottom line and all that, and having the conversation and trying to figure out, can we help you? Maybe we can't. That's always an option. That's a possibility, and we make it very clear on the front end. Look at if we're not a fit, we're okay with it. Tell us no, and we'll tell you no if we can't help you. It's not a problem. But those organizations that might need the help, we're pretty good at helping. But I'm gonna throw a caveat into that because we can bring the content to the organization. Yeah. We can work with the salespeople or the managers and all that. They have to execute. And my favorite analogy is like the gym analogy. It's like, you say you want to get fit. Great. Paying the gym membership does not get you fit. It's going in and working out, right. Like regularly, doing the work and maybe changing your diet and all that. Right. So if we train an organization on how to do things, if they don't apply it,
right.
No guarantees.
Correct.
But the ones that get it, I think the statistics are, as far as Sandler goes, typically within, we're talking sales training, for example, if it's the 12-month program, within 3 to 4 months, they'll see a return on the investment. And Sandler's not inexpensive. It's high-end stuff. So for somebody to make a big financial commitment to this, they want to know that they're going to see the gain or the benefit. And they typically will if they
it pays
apply.
For itself.
Yes, it does. Absolutely. Yep.
What do you need for a diagnosis? So if somebody comes to you and say, or do people wait until they're like on the operating table before they get help? Like, how do you?
Well, one would hope that's not the case, but certainly we can intervene there and, throw on the paddles and revive them if necessary. But there's a certain amount of, you want to be proactive. So I reach people through networking events, BRBC, Valley Chamber, through interactions on LinkedIn, putting up videos. I'm a big fan of developing awareness and getting inbound inquiries, because sometimes they don't know that they have a problem until they see you talk about it on a clip or they see you do a workshop in a chamber event. So at that point, it's a no pressure conversation. It's like, let's take 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Let's do a deep dive and see where the problems are. Like I said, and maybe we can help you, maybe we can't. But then if there's evidently a problem that we can work on, we start talking about things like, well, let's see, what's your time frame? Is it urgent? Do you have to do it now or later? Do you have a budget? Are you able to make a decision? What's the process for moving this whole thing forward? But that's I'm not sure that answered your question, but that's kind of the process.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out. Maybe a better question is, what's the most common deficiency you see or weakness you see in a company, and is it just relegated to their sales team, or can you work with the entire team?
The entire team. We've got some. We launched here. Oh God, it's
because you could argue everyone's in sales to an extent.
That's a good point, and that's very true. Yeah, even if you're a manager, not a sales manager, but a manager, you may have to sell your team on certain initiatives, things you're looking to implement, and certain actions you want them to take. So that's influence. And a lot of, I'm going to say probably the majority of Sandler's content is based on behavioral psychology. It's the things that we do that can influence either our own behavior, it's again going back to Tony Robbins a little bit, or the behavior of others. It's knowing those things and being able to apply them situationally. So to your question, we obviously a big focus is on sales, but we have clients, for example, we in our franchise, we launched an initiative called the P2P Executive Council, which I think you've heard us talk about on occasion. We're going into our 4th year of that. And it's a CEO mastermind group. And we have 8 people who've been with us for going on 4 years now. They've been part of this thing for, we meet once a month and we have like brainstorming, and it's a growth opportunity. We're working with some of their internal people, managers and salespeople, as a result of those relationships, because they realize we kind of know what we're talking about and we can be of help. But initially it could be just sales. And then we'd be in there working for a while and they'd say, hey, there's some changes. Do you guys work with managers? Yeah, we do. Customer service? Yeah, we do that. Yeah, because they all have processes that they should have processes, I should say,
right,
that need to be followed.
Systems.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are there any of these systems proprietary to Sandler? Like there's a method, how they have like Lean Six or Sigma. Are there any kind of certifications that one might get through Sandler?
Yes, in a manner of speaking, because when people go through the training, they do become Sandler certified. Now, that doesn't mean they are free to go out and train Sandler content, because it is proprietary in the sense that technically speaking, you're only supposed to train it if you're a franchise. Mm-hmm. I will say, without mentioning names, that quite a number of years ago when I was in the mortgage business, one of the companies I worked for brought in a sales trainer who was teaching Sandler content. I didn't know at the time. I hadn't been exposed to Sandler content. It wasn't until later on I realized, this guy's co-opting Sandler stuff and he's teaching it as his own. Yeah, Sandler corporate kind of frowns on that for obvious reasons. So it's proprietary in that sense. I mean, if I trained you on Sandler technique, Ramon, and you want to go and train your people, we'll have at it. You can do it.
Right.
I mean, maybe.
But I can't go start a workshop and presenting Sandler as.
No, that would be no. That's not considered a good idea. Yeah, you might get in trouble for that.
Oh man, yeah. So that's excellent. I mean, I can see it helping businesses. Is there, for the sake of our listeners, many of them are small startups. Entrepreneurs kind of venturing out, beginning to scale. Do you deal with smaller companies, or are you mostly dealing with mid-sized to larger companies?
It's it runs the gamut, but again, in fairness, I'll say that a lot of smaller companies don't necessarily have the budget. When I say budget, it's not always money; it's time.
Yeah.
Because the trainings
if the owner's doing everything, he's not going to have time to do training.
Exactly, too. Yeah. So there's that to consider. And in fact, when we kind of get into the whole budget conversation, we ask about, their time, their ability to devote time for their people. And then, money will come up as some part of the conversation. But budget is time as well as money. And a lot of small businesses, solopreneurs, if you will, they don't have the time. I mean, they may not have the money either, but the time could be like, I can't afford to carve out, 90 minutes every week to do this and then work on can't do it.
Well, it sounds like you might have some piece of advice there for small business owners.
Are you familiar with the E-Myth, Michael Gerber's?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm a big fan of that.
I share that actually on every presentation I give, that if your business cannot make money without you, you don't have a business. You have a job.
Yeah.
And guess what? You're working for a lunatic.
Yeah. I like it. I like that. Yeah.
That's his quote.
Yeah.
I mean, and I use it all the time because I think an alarming number of small businesses have 0 employees.
Yeah.
They register as a business, but it's really one guy or one gal, and when he or she goes on vacation, the business shuts down, and then when they come back, they're doing whatever the trade is or whatever their skill is, plus they're doing invoicing, plus they're supposedly marketing and networking, so they're doing it all.
Yeah. One
person, and it's just not scalable, not sustainable.
Yeah. I love, and I always paraphrase this because I remember it exactly, but Gerber's quote, he says, a lot of business owners are technicians who had an entrepreneurial seizure. And it's like, oh, I like to cook. I think I'll open a restaurant. Like, oh, well, that really makes no sense, but have at it, Yeah. So it's I mean there is that to consider. We don't limit people's ability to have access to Sandler, and I think any business owner, if they recognize they need to be able to sell, because no matter how wonderfully branded you make them, if they aren't able to actually convert, they got a problem. So that's where we could enter into the the dialogue.
In your experience, what's been like one of the top mistakes people make when trying to sell?
Oh wow, one of the top mistakes. There are so many. Well, we immediately launching into like the feature benefit conversation. One of the things we train on is the 30-second commercial. And if you think about it, like a networking event and all that, and you go out and you meet people, the traditional way a lot of people approach that is they immediately go into, oh, we're this and we're an award-winning that and we do this and we can help you out and all that. And it's like without even knowing if this person is potentially even a viable prospect for them. So we talk about you don't do that. You want to ask and find out if there are pains that you can solve. And part of that means you need to identify your ideal customer. As a business owner, who's your ideal customer? What characteristics do they have? What pains do they have? And then figure out a way to hit bullet points. We help businesses that are worried about X, are frustrated with X, and you know that these are issues your ideal customer has. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're talking to somebody that has those, they're going to start paying attention quick. And you say, I don't know, I don't know if any of that resonates with you. And I've had people literally say, you are describing my business. Okay, tell me a little bit more. See, because again, if they say, yeah, you're describing my business, the tendency for a lot of salespeople to say, oh, we can help you with this. And it's like right away you're into sales mode. No, no.
It slices, it dices.
Exactly.
Chops.
No, that is the worst thing to do in that moment. Then you say, wow, really? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Exactly.
Draw them out. Find out what the pain is, and then really start getting into it. Turn the knife, as we like to say.
Ouch.
Well, it's not being cruel, but it's like, hey, make them steep in the pain and realize they have a problem that needs to be solved.
Right, and they said it, not you.
Yes, correct.
And now you can present a solution.
Yep.
Absolutely. So where can folks find out more about Sandler? Or maybe sign up for a course or maybe get a demo. I don't know how you onboard, but share any way that people might find out more, because I think this would be fascinating and maybe life-changing for a small business or a mid-sized business. So
our website here locally, it's peak.sandler.com. P-E-A-K, like as in peak performance. Peak.sandler.com is our franchise's website. You can log in there. Sandler has like a sitelet concept. So every franchise has some version of the same website. We have some of our own unique programs on this, and there's white papers and podcasts and webinars, and there's everything. There's all kinds of stuff there that you could avail yourself of. If you're curious, you want to just check the whole thing out. Me specifically, because I'm a business development guy. So again, I sell and I train the product. You can reach me. My email address is doug.rawady, that's R-A-W-A-D-Y, @sandler.com. Send me an email. Mention that give me a reference for this so I know who you are. Mobile number is 203-257-4551. Again, if it's not caller ID and I don't know who you are, it may go into voicemail because I don't need to hear about the latest, way to save money on utility reduction. No need. You can find me on LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn.
You are very prolific on LinkedIn.
I'm a big believer in LinkedIn as a vehicle for creating awareness and networking and all that. So you can find me there. That's where I do business for the most part. I'm on Facebook and Instagram and all that, but LinkedIn is where I do business.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Well, Doug, thank you for being here and dropping some gems and sharing some of your wisdom with us.
Thank you, sir, for having me. I do appreciate it. And, we go to England, this is what we do over there. It's a bit different, but it's sort of similar in different ways. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
He's going to be announcing their F1 race this weekend.
He's definitely, by the way, he's also a voiceover artist.
That's right. I'm available for voiceovers. If you need me, just give me a call or send me a message of some sort of text or a smoke signal. I'll be there.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to this episode of Mission Control. Until next time, this is your host, Ramon Peralta with Peralta Design, and we launch brands.